everyone. Welcome to SportsKhabri. With me is Adi, and we're here to discuss if Rahul Dravid is the best Indian coach of all time, at least the ones that we have seen. Um, of course, he left on the best note possible, probably for an Indian coach winning that World Cup, and it meant a lot to him as well. And we saw that in the celebrations after he and his led India team suffered defeat in the 2007 50 over World Cup in West Indies to come back to the Caribbean to do it in the way that he did was just special for I think a lot of people who were following cricket at that time to watch, and yeah, for himself I think it was a great achievement. But yeah, that being said, there is discussion over whether Rahul Dravid is the best ever Indian coach, because it's going around quite a bit, and he's got a couple of others to contend with. Again, we're going to talk about the people that we have seen. So probably we start from the Gary Kirsten era. But yeah, Adi, if I had to plainly put it to you, bro, do you think he is the best Indian coach? We will discuss the numbers and achievements as we sort of go through the video, but just purely like just subjectively, based on the eye test, do you think he's coached the Indian team better than anybody else?
See, dude, at least when it comes to, cricket as a sport, it's very difficult for us to, sit and say, at least in my opinion, sit and say who's a better coach in terms of, there is no clear say, because when we talk about other sports, like maybe a team sport like basketball, football, managers or those so-called coaches have more, implications on the team, their philosophy, etc. They're way more hands-on than in the sport of cricket, right? When we look at cricket, it mostly comes down to those so-called captains. We always talk about who's the greatest captain, and we talk about who's the greatest coach, for example. But at least see, taking Dravid into the picture, if you're talking about him as an Indian coach, I think when I look at Dravid, in all honesty, you have to look at him into a more deeper meaning than just an Indian coach. Because out of all the coaches we've had before, right from Ravi Shastri, Gary Kirsten, Anil Kumble, etc., Rahul Dravid first started coaching the Indian team, right? Indian under 19 team, I'm sorry, right? That's where his journey actually started. And when I look at Dravid, I think he's been more important to India, not only just Indian team, but the Indian cricket, overall cricket. Because when before Dravid came into the Indian under 19 team, the under 19 team weren't that great in terms of whenever they went and played in the World Cup, they were very inconsistent. They never got that you know great results. I mean, they had won two World Cups before, but in generally they were very inconsistent. Indian under 19 team were not the strong team compared to the Indian first team whenever they go and went to play tournaments, right? And when Dravid came into the youth setup as a coach, he's the guy who changed. He got in a certain philosophy, a certain system into the youth development of Indian cricket, right? Completely. At the end of the day, he was the guy who was overlooking from Jammu and Kashmir till Tamil Nadu. Like all the cricket states were under him, and at least the youth level, and everyone. He's the one who revolutionized the youth system, ensured that the youth had a chance. Right, I've heard stories, so right from when he came in, he created a system where all the youth players get a chance to play for India under 19. For example, there was a rule where he put in the rule saying that if you
Yeah,
play one World Cup in the under
one
19
World
World
Cup.
Cup, yeah, that's it, you're done. Because he wanted other talents to come in and play, the World Cup, which is important because you still get new fresh talent every year coming and playing the under 19 World Cup, right? That's something he
Yeah.
did. He also created more tours for the Indian youth team to go play outside a lot more. He also, for example, he also created he had requested at a point of time, for the curators to create more green pitches so the Indian batters, and the bowlers both could favor those conditions and learn how to play in those conditions. There's a lot of things he actually did. And when we look at Indian cricket today, in terms of the likes of talent we have right now, in terms of Rishabh Pant, in terms of Shubman Gill, in terms of Abhishek Sharma also, it was actually all from Dravid's, his tenure as an Indian under 19 coach. Because we look at Gill right now and say, okay, wow, what a player, etc. We give him the next guy who's going to lead Indian cricket. But it started way before this. And I think Rahul Dravid and the work he did with these players is very important. Straight from, Shubman Gill, even Abhishek Sharma, Prithvi Shaw was there at the point of time, right? Rishabh Pant, even previously players like Sanju Samson, even Shreyas Iyer, they've all come under, so called the tree of Dravid as a coach to an extent. Because even with Samson, he was a guy who played for Dravid in Rajasthan Royal. He got that next step as a captain. He pushed him. So I think, see, if I talk about India coach, I think Rahul Dravid has been the most meaningful guy in cricket for India in terms of anything. In terms of anything, in the sense that in terms of coach behind the scenes, it's more than just has he won a World Cup. If he's won the World Cup, okay, he's the greatest coach. For me, it's more than that. I truly believe that this guy, putting in that work and time and effort with the youth, which not a lot of coaches do, And right now, India's such a big success in youth cricket, because you look at India under him, we went to three finals in the World Cup. We won one, we lost two, but like that's the philosophy he kept. He wanted these players. His entire idea while as an Indian under 19 coach was to ensure it's not about winning trophies. I don't He didn't care about winning trophies. It was more about, I want to create players who are good, high quality players, and right from the get go, right from the young age, they can play for the Indian team, for the Ranji teams, whatever it is, they can play at the highest level. And we've seen that. We've literally seen, Gill being able to play right from a very young age. He looked like a guy who's ready for international cricket. Abhishek Sharma, even in the World Cup, we saw. I mean, in the IPL, we saw how easily he slotted in and helped his franchise. So I think a lot of credit goes to Dravid as that when it comes to the youth setup, and I think that transitioned into your Indian cricket, the first team. Fair enough, he couldn't get the so-called biggest results there, but I think as a coach, I think with Dravid, I think it's more than just an Indian head coach. At least from what I've heard, what I've seen, and what the results have proven also.
No, I think there's definitely more to it as well because at least for him to okay, just in terms of numbers, to put it out there, Dravid is the highest win percentage across formats for India ever as an Indian coach, right? So that itself, I think, puts him by far above the rest, 71.5 win percent. After that, the next best in the recent era is Ravi Shastri, 65.8, Anil Kumble, 62.1, Gary Kirsten, 59. So that's the top four. And I think something that's helped Dravid also, like throughout this tenure, is somehow like you never hear about dressing room blow-ups, or you don't hear about fights and disagreements from the dressing room that you kind of did when it came to Kumble or Ravi Shastri, right? Like I think that's his relationship with players has also helped. The fact that he had already worked with Pant, the fact that he'd already worked with Shubman Gill, like all of these guys before he came to the Indian setup, the national team setup at the senior level. He's played with Virat Kohli, he's played with Rohit Sharma. I think these things make a difference. Like he's already known these guys for a while, and then he's coming and working with them. I think, and just the way he is, at least the way he goes about his business, how much ever I've seen him from captaining India in 2007 to then coaching the Rajasthan Royals to coaching the India under 19s, working with the NC, and now doing it, having done it at the senior level. He seems like a very calm and relaxed, but he has a method and a process, and no matter what, no matter who you are, I think like Dravid will stick to it, which is great to see. And I think the numbers, dude, that's what. Even if you want to argue in terms of numbers, he's got the numbers. If you want to argue in terms of trophies, he's got the trophies as well because he's got the T20 World Cup, and I think he's got WTC final to his name. He's got a World Cup final to his name, and even there, I think he matches most of India's best coaches. Right, like the 2007 World Cup. Yeah, unfortunately, India was going through a sort of a transition. We didn't have like a solid coach back then. 2011 when we won the World Cup, of course, Gary Kirsten had done a lot of work from 2008 with MS Dhoni, so a lot of credit goes to him. But yeah, since then, bro, like this is India's most consistently successful period, and I think that's why he will go down as probably the most successful coach India have had till date. Um, but I think you have to mention the test side India became under Ravi Shastri. I think that I don't think not a lot of others would compete with that. Unfortunately, we couldn't see Rahul Dravid's team go to England or go to Australia and play. Yeah, it never happened.
Dravid
So
went
yeah,
on. Dravid went to England where they lost, by the way.
One test, that was a one-off test. I'm
Still,
talking about a proper series. So we'll never know how they would have performed big series in Australia or England. So I think that's the only thing that is really missing from his CV as an Indian coach, and that's where I think people will say that Ravi Shastri's red ball team was dominant. They were crazy. Even the white ball team, to an extent, were really good because you made it to the World Cup semi-final in 2019, and many would again argue that India were really good in that tournament. So I think there's a case to be made for a couple of others, but overwhelmingly in terms of numbers and the impact that he's had, I would still say Dravid. But do you think anybody else comes close?
dude, that's the thing, right? When it comes to coaches, I think first of all, it's unfortunate how you know not every coach gets to coach maybe the World Cup, etc. And in cricket, especially Indian cricket, it's your coaches stay for a very short period of time in terms of a team. Maybe 2-3 years maximum. Ravi Shastri also was around the same amount of time. You talk about Kumble was barely in a year or a year and a half. With Dravid also it was what 3 years, right? And now we have GG. So it's unfortunate in terms of as a coach, you know, you get a very less time or short period of time to get you get to spend time with your team or the national team. Apart from Shastri, I think you're at least what we've seen, right? I think obviously Gary Kirsten was important for India, especially the way he came into the Indian team. At that point of time, also taking that Indian team and winning the World Cup in your home tournament. It's not an easy feat to do because uh, it's actually in terms of I previously, like, whenever we talk about it, the pressure the Indian team had during that World Cup, and
Hmm.
the it was like a must for them to win because of all the previous events, all the previous World Cups where they lost. 2007 they didn't even make it through the group stages to the Super 8s. Previously 2003 also they lost in the final. So there's so much pressure, coming into a home World Cup, being the favorites, especially with such a stacked team. They had to win it no matter what. And Gary Cousin was a huge part of it. People end up giving praise to Dhoni or your Sachin's, etc. But at the end of the day, the coach plays a huge role in terms of keeping these guys, on their feet, keeping these guys. It's almost like a support role, right? In cricket, it's more of you support these players. You just ensure you get the best out of them. There is no tactical aspect of the sport like football or basketball, because there you have certain dynamics. Here it's purely getting the best out of players, keeping up the players in the best mental state, helping out even in their maybe their game, like their technique, bowling, batting technique, etc. And I do believe, like, at the end of the day, winning the World Cup always has a great mark on your CV. Anytime you win a World Cup, it's something huge. And winning a World Cup in India, for India, is like 10 times more the value in cricket. So I think we
Hmm.
can't do that. But see, that's the thing. I believe, like, see, overall, I think debatable things will for India coaches, etc. Because India overall, previously, before 2011, was always drama. It was always some form of tension, some form of uncertainty, some form of there's always some form of commotion happening, right? And I think since the 2011, when Dhoni came and settled down, it's been a bit more stable. Indian cricket has been way more stable, and
Yeah.
then we've been in the semi-finals or finals of almost every World Cup we played, right? I think right now India's in a good state in cricketing, in the cricketing sport. So I think, like, right now we can talk about coaches like Ravi Shastri, Dravid, because these guys are the one who are getting the best out of this team. Because right now India has been dominating cricket like they never done. Because previously we still had big teams like England, big teams like South Africa. Also, they were such a talented team. Australia, they were all the favorites always. Right now we talk about cricket. I think India is the most dominating team. Overall, you look at anything stats wise, series wise in the World Cups, and to an extent it is because of Ravi Shastri, Dravid, ensuring these high standards are kept there, right? When we talk about Ravi Shastri, yeah, I do believe, like, his test team, the mentality he brought in those test teams was something else. Because whatever we give credit for Dravid, bringing up the youth talent, giving, trusting in these youth, developing these youth, giving them the support, these young players. I think it's the same thing with Shastri, because the way he did change the mentality in the Indian team. And when we talk about Shastri, he didn't change the mentality of, I don't care what condition it is. I don't care if he literally put in this mentality of, I don't care what's going to happen. I'm not going to give excuses to play cricket. I'm going to go there, play my best cricket, no matter what. And that's the Indian team philosophy when it came to test at that point of time. There was no reasoning or excuses given, like, okay, the pitch was bad, weather was bad, I can't bat, I have a thumb injury. I'm thinking, you look at how India played in that Australia Test series. I think a lot of it goes to even Avi Shastri, because I know for a fact, and people have also spoken for a fact, that the amount of confidence he gave to those players, to the team, saying, we don't care. At the end of the day, our cricket is going to speak. It's not, the name of the player. It's about what the player does on the day. And
Hmm.
I think we do undervalue that a lot, because since then I don't think we've got the same mentality in the test like we had that time. You know, going to England, going to Australia, and being the favorites. I think especially in Test cricket we do miss that right now, and missed it for a while, because under Dravid, as I said, I think he's a more of a guy who supports his team, supports the captain. So your Test captains Rohit Sharma, I think he didn't take Test as seriously in terms of away Test series than it was under Shastri. I think it's so tough, bro, because we do not value Test cricket as much as the World Cups or red ball cricket. Because
Yeah.
if you look at our red ball, when under Shastri, we were world number one for 3-4 years, and before that we weren't. And we became the number one under him. We kept it for a long time, and I think that matters a lot, because previously with India and Test cricket was always iffy again, right? It was very unstable. India used to be the number one for a time, and then we went crashing. We were number eight, world ranked number eight. We had such a bad time in tests at that point of time, and then Shasi comes in, and he did bring in that mentality of, test matches are important, even Kohli, but it was always Shasi the one who backed it up. I think that mentality difference was has been a bit subdued, even though we haven't played any away test matches for a while. But that's something I could see when we went to South Africa also, that motivation was lacking to an extent. So yeah, I
Hmm.
think it's a tough
I think, yeah,
conversation.
fair enough. I think one thing that has helped both of them, I think Ravi Shastri and Rahul Dravid, is sort of that the fact that they've also had captains who've had similar mindsets. I think Kohli, Ravi Shastri went well together, and Rohit Sharma and Dravid went well together. I think it's sort of mindsets matched, and the way they approach the game really matched. So I think that way both these coaches have been helped by those factors. We've thrown in Gary Kirsten's name as well, because he's of course a World Cup winning coach. Ravi Shastri is not, unfortunately. Rahul Dravid did become a World Cup winning coach by the end of his tenure. So there's a lot of factors that we consider when we discuss this. So guys, yeah, let us know what you think. If you think Rahul Dravid is India's best ever coach, is it Ravi Shastri for you? Probably somebody like Gary Kirsten as well. Yeah, let us know. Follow and of course like and share these videos as well. Subscribe to Sports Khabri, and we'll see you soon.